everything is changing. Everything is changing very, very, very rapidly. When I started to become interested in film, it wasn't so easy to see films, particularly if you wanted to see old films. There were few archives. I was fortunate. I was an undergraduate at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and there were all kinds of programs to show old films. And then one of the libraries, the University Historical Society Library, was the recipient of thousands of prints. Old Warner Brothers, RKO, a number of the Poverty Row studios, Monogram, Republic, Producers Releasing Corporation. And you could set yourself up in a room with a Kodak pageant projector, thread up a movie, and watch it. Movie after movie after movie. Now, of course, it's just completely different. There are old movie channels, there's streaming, there are DVDs. Movies are, in many ways, ubiquitous. Yes, they're still in theaters, but there's a whole world of current cinema and a world of the tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of movies that have been made in the past. And I ended up as a graduate student at the University of California in Berkeley. And in those days, there was the Pacific Film Archive. There still is the Pacific Film Archive. But the Pacific Film Archive was run by Tom Luddy, and every day there were 3, sometimes 4 movies that were playing, and the schedule constantly changed. Wednesday was different than Tuesday, which was different than Monday, which was different than Sunday. There were retrospectives. You could go and see most of the films of Bresson or Preston Sturgis or Howard Hawks, visiting filmmakers. For me, this was crucial. I became introduced to documentary films, but it wasn't Grierson or Flaherty. I don't come out of a tradition of verite or direct cinema. It was a far more bizarre documentary tradition. I remember the first time I saw the documentaries of Werner Herzog, and then met Werner Herzog in the 70s in Berkeley, California. To me, the signature documentaries that influenced me was not Nanook of the North, although I do indeed like Nanook of the North, but it was Herzog's Fata Morgana, or Land Before Darkness and Silence, or Ecstasy of the great sculptor Steiner. It was some of the older documentaries, expressionistic documentaries, Vertov's Man with a Movie Camera, Vigo's Apropos de Nice. So I've been lucky, I've benefited from the ability to look at a whole diverse collection of documentary films, experimental films, narrative films, you name it. I think of it as a love-hate relationship. I really truly love film, and I really truly hate it as well. Sometimes I feel I'm being it's an odd thing for a Jew to say, but being crucified on film, it's tortured me and given me unbelievable pleasure over the years. And in the beginning, when I first started making my own films, Gates of Heaven was my first film, it was unheard of to see a documentary film in a theater. There was no independent film movement. It did not exist. There was one distributor, which was New Yorker Films. It was a distributor of all of the Fassbinder films, of Wenders, of Herzog, among other things. It was the distributor of the New German Cinema as it was known in the 70s. No, there was no such thing as independent film. My first film, we edited it in Emeryville. Emeryville is just right next to Berkeley, a warehouse. And I showed a rough cut at the Pacific Film Archive with, I believe, 3 people in the audience. My girlfriend at the time, Tom Luddy, and Wim Wenders, who just happened to be there. And after the screening, it was still a double system print held together with Scotch tape and glue. I was apprehensive, and I asked Wenders what he thought. He said, well, it's a masterpiece, obviously. I often think of that moment as the beginning of my film career. It went to the New York Film Festival in 1978, and it just so happened that there was a newspaper strike. So nothing was written about the film in New York. Luck that it was shown there, not so lucky that no one wrote about it being shown there. A lot of this is luck of the draw. A lot of it, who in hell knows what's going to happen or why it happens. I had suddenly 2 Chicago critics, television and newspaper critics, that started writing about the movie and reviewing it. Not once, not twice. In the end, 4 times over the course of the following year. Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. And in many ways, I feel because of them, I have a film career. Lucky that that film was distributed. Every single one of my documentaries, go figure, has gone into theaters first. And it has always been of great pride to me that the films were designed to be shown in theaters, were shown in theaters, were reviewed as theatrical motion pictures. It's hard enough to make this stuff. It's time-consuming, often depressing. In all honesty, I would have to say that making a movie about Donald Rumsfeld at times could be devastating. You've invited into your editing room. We would joke, what if he hates the movie so much that we all get sent to a black site in one of the stands, You know, I end up with my fingernails being pulled out in Kazakhstan or Turkmenistan or wherever they do that kind of thing, whatever client government. And then I had this appalling realization that my whole office had become a black site. We were trapped with him, editing this thing. There's something quite monstrous about it. Yeah, hard to make these things, and it's a good film. Self-serving of me to say so, but I like it. I think it reveals something unexpected and, yeah, something horrifying. It's my political horror movie, if you like. And I'd like people to see it. And I'm very thankful to Dogwoof for facilitating this. Yeah, thank you, Dogwoof. Yeah.
Let me put up this next memo.
You want me to read this?
Yes, please.
All generalizations are false, including this one. There it is.
Rumsfeld survived Watergate with reputation intact.
Possible vice presidential running mate with President Ford.
Questions about Rumsfeld are whether he's too ambitious playing second fiddle to Reagan.
The credit belongs to people who are carped at and criticized and said, oh my goodness, you're warmongers. And we need to understand how we got to where we are. Who do we want to provide leadership in the world? Somebody else?
When Shakespeare wrote history, the motivating force was character defects, jealousies, etc., etc., etc. Maybe Shakespeare got it wrong.
Maybe he had it right. Governor Reagan decided to have George Bush to be vice president.
It seems to me that if that decision had gone a slightly different way, you would have been future president of the United States.
That's possible.
How do you think that they got away with 9/11? It seems amazing in retrospect.
Everything seems amazing in retrospect.
Stuff happens. And free people are free to make mistakes and commit crimes and do bad things. They're also free to live their lives and do wonderful things.
And you have to pick and choose. Well, to the extent you pick and choose and you're wrong, the penalty can be enormous. Subject: unknown knowns. That is to say, things that you think you know, that it turns out you did not.